podcast, the writer's room. One of those commentaries I'm doing, of course. Um, Very cool. Today we're doing what's probably the most influential movie on at least my generation of film person, and probably the generation before. Anyone born after 1965 loves this. Like, not all, well, a lot of them not only just love the movie, uh this is their movie. Like, this is what a movie is. uh from this to Marvel and the Batman stuff. A movie is very much a promise of grand mythic adventure. It's not The Godfather, and it's uh appeal to whatever. I, I'll explain probably a little more during the actual podcast, but since of course this is just an intro. But you know, Star Wars is doing a very different thing than Taxi Driver and Godfather, and it's influenced movies to the point where The Godfather and Taxi Driver feel alien, and a few other genres feel alien too. But ironically for Alien with the with Star Wars. But I'll take it as I go. I'll see how much I complain. I'll try to keep it pure. This has been a lot more purely just, oh my god, Star Wars. That would have been much more of that kind of thing a few years back. But I guess part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast now is I no longer fawn over this thing like it's the gospel. Well, we're gonna get to that part, but I no longer fawn over it like it's the gospel, which is funny. Okay, well, that's a really actually big topic. Since, as I think I even said in Batman Begins podcast, this stuff replaces religion. This is Jesus for atheists. So, yeah, people. This is for a lot of people born after 1965. This is the Bible. This is it. This and Marvel, and that's their Old and New Testament. So, you know, uh, and to the movie, I mean, to George Lucas's credit, he is a genius. He deserves to have the place he does in in film history. And it's interesting that he's treated like shit for the prequels because, again, he's the godfather of the sort of filmmaking that the people who don't like the prequels worship. So that's a pretty good, this is a pretty good intro. Uh, Enjoy my commentary on Star Wars 1977. Thank you. Alrighty. The most over discussed film in American and modern American nerd culture. Probably the movie that invented nerd culture, honestly, which we can talk about later, because that might not be true. Uh, Here we go. Fox logo. Interesting. Well, Disney could actually use this. That logo, which is kind of cool. The comment I just made about inventing nerd culture, the only thing I'd have to wonder is Japanese anime and Japanese role playing games in Pokemon and that kind of thing. I don't know about the relation between the Disney music. I don't know about the relation between that and Star Wars. I don't know, because most of my friends, what they grew up in wasn't Star Wars and Marvel. It was the animes, so Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball Z. It's the same shit. It's children's adventure fiction, and I just don't know if that stuff got more popular here because of Star Wars. If there was like room for it to exist here because of Star Wars. I don't know. We're at the low. We're at the credits. Oh, so where do we begin with this? Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this one. You know, I mean it more than probably any other movie in America, really. Um, I'll try to be as least obvious as possible. Uh, this is a new Hollywood production, technically. Brian De Palma helped. Well, I've never actually seen the De Palma movie, uh, but I know he actually more than the others was steeped in Hitchcock. But anyway, he helped with The Crawl, basically. Yeah, the same movement that was seen as like the artistic peak of American movies created this. Uh, it's a lot. That's kind of the thing with this movie because we're at the shot with the giant Star Destroyer, which again, when I was a child, yeah, it's captivating as fuck. You have to wonder how much the movie works because of the special effects. Even Lucas said himself, his one of his goals, and there's quite a few. One of the goals with Star Wars was they want to do Flash Gordon, but really good. And Flash Gordon itself is like a pulpy adventure. It's Dragon Ball Z. It's closer to Dragon Ball Z than Star Wars is, because that's all like just fighting action stuff. This tries to be Jesus, basically, as they said in the opening. In the opening, it's cool that so J.J. Abrams put the first words out of C-3PO's mouth is also the last words in Rise of Skywalker, which is one of the last words in a way, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I just wonder, it's the technical filmmaking stuff. Um, like how much of it you buy. But wait, how much the quality of the movie is purely because the special effects work is so amazing. Like nothing related to the story or the characters or whatever. It's just, oh my god, it's all looks real. So, like I remember noting way back when it's like 2 years ago. Again, the magic of Star Wars was it took the B movie pulp serial fiction and made it look as good as Searchers and Monster Radio. Like it made it look as realistic. And yeah, this all looks real. This doesn't look like a set exactly. They're shooting back and forth. Such an obvious comment to make, but this is the big yeah. You meet Vader. The way the movie's structured, it's uh it's basically kind of a 20-minute prologue. It's actually for starting what we know today as like the modern action adventure movie. It is still a bit strange. If you look at its story structure, you don't meet Luke until 20 minutes in, which is interesting. Yeah. The Kessel Spice. There's also it's probably worth mentioning. There's a thing in sci-fi writing where you just mention uh it's like weaving in these references that are you don't understand, and that helps world building. That's kind of interesting. It's also been noted that Vader's his sort of he's a lot angrier than usual in this scene. Out of canon, it's probably just because they didn't know how to act with him yet. But in canon, I guess it makes sense after well, it's its own thing. But Rogue One, he he obviously knows they got the real plan. So that's a little stun gun action. Yeah, it's weird. It's usually I don't know. I actually can't think of any examples, at least from Marvel or Pixar, where again you're meeting your main character 20 minutes in. That's actually really strange. And even like the older movies that Searchers and Lawrence of Arabia for one. But well, yeah, because again, Lucas loved those movies. Seven Samurai Code that doesn't exactly have a lead the way a Yushu movie. That's a real ensemble movie. Seven Samurai. It's also worth noting. I kind of see Lucas as he's not a great director, and he is and he isn't. It's hard to explain. He's not like well. Spielberg is an amazing director. Let's put it that way. He's like Hitchcock is an amazing director. Kubrick is an amazing just director. I feel like Lucas is very workmanlike. Like he'll get the shots he needs. They look fine, but I can't think of any iconic Lucas shots. At least in the way again you can think of Kubrick shots or like the way Hitchcock moves his camera. If that makes any sense. Like it feels as good of a it's as well directed as those old B movie stuff. The serials. Like John Ford and uh David Lean. Again, those are much stronger filmmakers. Or much stronger. Well, that's a good way to put it. He's an amazing filmmaker, Lucas. But as a director, the way Spielberg and Ford and Lean are, I don't think it's the. I think there's an obvious difference. Yeah, again, they shot. That's a mod. I think it's a mod. So I wonder how they did Tatooine. This was filmed in, I think, Tunisia. So, like, this is like a David Lean shot, kind of. Yeah, Lucas. He's not a cinephile. If I said that right. Like Spielberg and what's his face, Scorsese are obvious. Coppola too. Obvious lovers of film. Lucas feels like he's interested in it, but he's not gonna. I don't know. Like I don't know. It's just because he's talked about like in loving Kurosawa, and Ford, and Lean. But even then, it's like his knowledge. Like if you compare that to the knowledge Scorsese has, it's like it's obviously a lot less. I mean, and that's maybe not a fair comparison because Scorsese is probably outside of the films he's directed, which is funny. He's also a documentary filmmaker, which I'll talk about in, I guess, the Taxi Driver stuff. But he's a clear that stuff clearly influences him. But you know, he's he's like a film academic as much as a filmmaker. Which is interesting because it's like, to be a film academic, I have to admit, I don't know. Because I worry about that with myself, where it's like, you know, there's not many film critics who made great directors outside of the French New Wave people, I guess. But like Ebert never won the film directing. I mean, one name off the top of my head is Richard Brody, who I think works for the New Yorker. He didn't go into film directing. Richard Roper, Peter Travers, I think that's how you say it. They didn't go into film directing. But I kind of want to actually do this shit. So I do like that shot of the scene for all that far away. Let's try and let me rack my brain for all the interesting Star Wars bits because I've been obsessed with this movie. Again, like a lot of my generation is. Again, this is the start. Uh, you can't get Marvel and Batman and DC and that sort of shit without Lucas. And well, again, they're trying to be a mythology. That's the idea. It's film as mythology. That's Lucas. That is all Lucas. You know, like I think that's what a lot of people love about them. It's not like because I'm like a movie, like a movie. Movie could be a lot of things. Like it's funny. There's I don't know what it's called. Like to start a discussion by going, "What is this?" Matt Walsh, who is rather deplorable, and well, for obvious reasons, I'm sure. What is a woman? And it's so starting a question like that is probably a bit tainted right now. But what is a movie? What is a movie? Like, what is that? How do you define what that is? And for a lot of people my age, it's pathology. It's this. It's because Spielberg is escapism and it's adventure, but Lucas has promised you. He promises you an epic like mythology that you get involved in. It's like church. It's basically like church. In a way, Spielberg's movies aren't like church. They're more. They're adventures that can. They're like fairy tales, and fairy tale. That's the word used with Star Wars. It's like how there's a difference between Cinderella and Jesus, or Cinderella and Muhammad, or Moses, or Hercules, or Buddha. But oh, it's doing the circle thing. But yeah, there's a clear difference between those two types of stories, and this is mythology. It's more than an epic because an epic usually, I guess I get well, an epic means, especially in a movie epic means something a little different than mythology. Like a movie about Jesus is an epic, but traditional, like Dr. Zhivago is an epic. It's a big historical event, and then there's fictional characters within it. That's like a traditional understanding of what a movie epic is. But in literature, yeah, it's an epic is like, Gilgamesh. But even Gilgamesh, like there's a moralizing element to the Jesus story. Which again, I used to be an atheist, but I did recently convert. Probably maybe because I've studied this shit so much and I just find it so appealing, which is interesting. But again, Jesus, Muhammad, Moses, like they're great grand moral tales. Um, you know, See, like Baron Lucas also he's a huge history fan, and one of his favorite stuff to read growing up was history, so like the founding fathers and Abraham Lincoln, like those kind of biographies, which I love too. I grew up with too. So, if anything, Star Wars is also it's like an epic biography in a way. Like if you were to tell the life story of FDR in 3 movies, that that probably gets pretty close to what Star Wars is. So, yeah, I did have a movie about FDR during 100 days. A movie idea. It's not written, of course, but that'd be a really good movie, I think. Um, which is it's worth mentioning. Schindler's List is probably Schindler's List, Lincoln, two Spielberg movies. That those two probably do come closest to what Star Wars tries to be. I'll say that much. But Jurassic Park, no. I mean, I said that a little meanly, but um, and I'll break that in the Jaws review what that is. Those are about everyman a lot of the time. Spielberg's movies. They're about the little guys who, even because I know Tolkien, his stuff is about the little people, but Frodo saves the world. Spielberg's story would be more about he'd be doing like a little. He's the Hobbit. Well, yeah, he's probably the Hobbit. He'd make a great Hobbit movie. But even then, if you were to still do a Spielberg movie set with Lord of the Rings, that'd be like its own little. It'd be like a side quest, to use the video game term, of you know, um, of the Lord of the Ring, basically. So we meet Luke here. Yeah, it's like for all intents and purposes, the two robots are the main characters of the movie, which is it's they are and they aren't. That's actually something. This comes from Hidden Fortress Kurosawa, which there's one of my page turning books is Star Wars, The Secret History of Star Wars. That's an amazing book, and it goes all into Lucas and just everything George Lucas and Star Wars, or at least his relation with Star Wars, I should say, because there's other biographies I haven't read about Lucas. I love the theme here that Williams does, and of course that more than maybe even the special effects makes the movie is the Williams score. I can ad nauseum discuss. Um, but what was I saying about the Lucas books? What about George Lucas? What was I saying? What come to me? Oh, Kurosawa took that trope of the the two fools, kind of the two side characters. That comes from Shakespeare. The two Hamlet characters formed Golden Krantz. What is it? Golden Krantz and what's his face? I'm about to sneeze, guys. Here we go. Guildenstern and Golden. Guildenstern and Golden. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. See, it shows how much Shakespeare I know. Which I haven't. I'll get to the Godfather review because that is a properly Shakespearean story, I should say. Which, funnily enough, Star Wars is as well, in quite a few different ways, which I can get into as well. But Godfather it's America's Shakespeare, which is kind of why it's held up so highly. This is again, it's funny. So of the many genres Star Wars is one of them, especially in New Hope, it's Western. And this is all Western. It's a settlement. It's like what do you call it? A ranch? Yeah, it's a Skywalker Ranch, which is also the name of Lucas's Lucasfilm's home. Well, it's George Lucas's personal business center. He owns it. Lucasfilm doesn't. At least I don't think Lucasfilm owns it. Oh, that's a little fade. Yeah, so fade out and fade in. Okay, that's old school. You wouldn't do that in a modern movie. You'll see that in Godfather too. You'll see a lot of Lawrence of Arabia. David Lean does it too. I don't know what you call them. The like stuff like that, like fade out, fade in, and then dissolving of the image. He does that a lot. Coppola. It's funny because I don't see Coppola as a great director either. He's an amazing, and Lucas is too. They're amazing students, which is part of why they're really inspiring to me. Because it's like, oh, you could teach yourself this stuff. Whereas like Scorsese and Spielberg, they feel like born filmmakers, and that I can't relate to. I tried to do it when I was younger. I think I mentioned the Batman Begins. Uh, the neighborhood boys accused me of engaging in homosexual activities because of that desire to make films. But yeah, I'm not a born. Yeah, I didn't. Ryan Johnson was one. Chris Nolan, Vince Gilligan. but not me. Um, here you go, the big message time. It's funny. I should probably. I've been doing these in 25-minute bursts, so I'm actually going to be doing the first 25 minutes of The Godfather in a few minutes, which is interesting. So this is again the exciting incidents here. Here you go. Yeah, big again. So in this movie, the love interest is Leia. A big message, a big part of the secret history of Star Wars is how much the Star Wars saga changed from. I mean, forget even just this movie, but from the inception of what you know, Lucas getting the idea whenever he did, which in itself is kind of in contention when he got the idea, which I could talk about. But how much it changed from inception of the idea to this movie, Empire Strikes Back, and every movie since it. Oh, they always changed what the saga was, which is interesting. So yeah, Luke's character in this movie, he's I used to not like him as much. I used to see him as just pure audience surrogate, but he's kind of grown on me. I do prefer Return of the Jedi Luke. Yeah, he's just I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe. His character is good old boy, but that has different implications in America. Good old boy. He's a kid. He's basically a teenager. He's whiny, but he has a good heart. And again, that's kind of where you really see the Flash Gordon stuff, I guess. Very different, certainly, from Christian Bale's Batman. You're talking about hero characters, with Superman or whatever. Even like, and it's because Luke Skywalker kind of becomes again the great mythic hero. But he's not that in this one, in the way that like Henry Cavill's Superman and Bale's Batman and these sort of characters usually start, which I also like to do my own work in this genre. I do like them being a little more mythic energy to them starting out, but you know, Luke doesn't have it. What do I mean by mythic energy? Uh, Hard to describe. Less whiny, for sure. That's one. There you go. That's one. Less immature. Um, it's also worth mentioning too. This is probably you see a lot of American Graffiti in this, which I should mention too, to get back on the shitting on Star Wars and everything it's created wagon. A lot of older people, like new Hollywood people, feel like this movie ruined George Lucas. He should have made more American Graffiti's. And he wanted, well, that's its own fucking story. He wanted to make movies like Guanacazi. And well, yeah, that's the best example, but like really abstract, purely visual movies, poems, basically. And that's Guanacazi. 2001 is a little bit, there's a little of that energy in David Lynch's work, but really it's Quantico because that's still like a little horror-y, it's a little noir-y. Yeah, the big scene with the two sons. Destiny calls, and yeah, it's a great scene. This is the first scene I ever remember from Star Wars, by the way, so that's good. Uh, But yeah, so basically, Coppola feels like if it wasn't for Star Wars, we would have had more American Graffiti. You know, those types of movies from George Lucas. But the thing, and it's been pointed out, Lucas has had all the time in the world, all the money in the world to make those movies. He just hasn't, for whatever reason that we, I'm sure I could guess later on in the show, but he never made them. And there's not many. He doesn't have the excuses that other filmmakers probably do, like, oh, well, he doesn't have enough money or whatever. But the it's, he wanted to make, his dream was for Lucasfilm to become a sort of film conservatory, basically, of film, like where filmmakers meet and come up with new ideas and how to do things. That kind, he finally came. That turned into a film museum, which is finally getting opening up, I think, next year, which is awesome. You know, dream fulfilled in some way. That's cool. But that was his goal with, he wanted to use Star Wars to pay for that kind of thing. To pay for his basically film conservatory. Uh and yeah, he produced, I forget if it was Kwanakatsu or one of the sequels. Coppola did as well, but he helped get, he helped get that movie made. And if you don't know what Kwanakatsu is, it's, well, I guess you could just do that if you don't want to. It's, again, it's a visual tone poem, so it's all visuals. It's Philip Glass. I got introduced to that movie because of Philip Glass, and I got introduced to Philip Glass because Grand Theft Auto 4. So there was a radio station on that, like, has a lot of music I would love. Influenced my own taste in music. The Journey, it's called. But yeah, George Lucas is involved with Kwanakatsu. So well, that was Star Wars Part 1. That's it. Tune in next time for Star Wars Part 2, whenever that comes. I don't know when it will come, but it will come. That's it. Have a good night and or day.